Welcome to Inception 101. A quick agenda for us before we dive into some content. We're going to introduce this webinar series, Inception 101. We're going to review the Inception architecture. If you missed our webinar or just need a refresher from the webinar we had about a month ago where we covered the architecture more in depth. And then we are going to see Tessa build a data pipeline in Inception, and then we'll finish with some Q&A. So without any further ado, welcome to Inception 101. We'll be here every Tuesday for the next 4 weeks to cover the basics of Inception and the concepts, the experience of what it looks like to work in Gen 3 of the Ascend platform. We'll be covering Build. So today you are here to see a tour of the UI and how that developer experience is. And then next week, we'll talk through automation. Nandan will be presenting on what automation looks like, custom automation, and more. And then we'll, on July 2nd, talk through observability on the platform. And then July 9th, we'll finish with optimization. These are intentionally very high level. We will have documentation and deeper webinars where we go more in depth to some of the concepts that we'll cover here, things like CI/CD and working with AI and all of those great things that you want to explore more in depth. We'll have definitely more in-depth webinars in the future and documentation available as the platform is released. So just a quick reminder, in case you missed the webinar a month ago when we introduced Project Inception, or in case you want a reminder, a quick overview of our architecture that we're working with here. It starts with the roles. We really wanted a way to unify a data team around a central platform. And that platform includes data ingestion, transformation, delivering your data, orchestrating that data, and optimizing those pipelines. And what the Ascend platform is doing is obviously you're developing your pipelines end to end, but Ascend is collecting tons and tons of metadata on all of that work that's happening. And so as all of that metadata is collected, it gets exposed to our automation engine, which fuels some really awesome optimization, which we'll cover in future Inception 101 webinars. But it also helps give context to our integrated AI assistant, Otto. So if you choose to expose that metadata to Otto, he is context aware and can really help you do some incredible things. So if we give this some more depth, we have our data engineering core here, the unified metadata, our automation engine, and the AI assistant. We can see there's tons and tons of functionality and features that have been built into the new platform. And really where we're going to focus today is seeing some of that functionality with the AI assistant Otto and in that data engineering core, what that development experience is like. So let's dive in to what it looks like to build in the UI.
Hi, everybody. Really excited to be here. Today, we're going to be building in Ascend. I'm going to be focusing on building in the UI. Next week, Nandan will be showing you how to build in the CLI. So first, we're going to start with going into the build portion. As you can see, I have selected a branch from my source control, which in this case is GitHub. We are integrated into source control, so everything I save will be committed to my branch in Git. This makes CI/CD super simple. We will be covering CI/CD in detail in future webinars. So within the build, you can see the file structure here. We have connections. These are going to be connections to your source system. Also will include the connection to your data plane. And if you see, I have some parameters here that mention a secret, GCP. I do want to show you that that is going to be a GCP vault right here. So we have GCP under vault. This is pointed to our secret manager in GCP. So that is great news. With Ascend, you're going to be able to connect to whatever vault you want, wherever you want to manage all of your secrets. It's going to make it a lot more simpler to update creds because you're only doing it one place. So your security and DevOps teams are going to love this. No more duplicate processes across different systems anymore. All right, so we have here a folder that this is our data folder. This is a great place to put in some sample data, maybe some use cases that you want to develop on to validate that any changes you make or any SQL transforms that you create are going to handle all of those test scenarios. Really great place. You can also, if it's just a static piece of data that you need to ingest, this is a great place to put that as well. Deployments. So you can see here I have several different deployments. We're going to use this deployment today. You can set up parameters that you can pass through to other components. This has the information about my data plane. So that's all set up for me. And now for the nitty-gritty of it all, our flows. That's where you're going to have all your different components. That's going to be your read components, your transforms, your write components, tests. If you have some tests that you want to run across this specific flow, you can do that. Really easy to manage and a nice structure. All right. And then we have this project file. This is a really important project file. What this does is it's going to define what we're going to look at for connections, for deployments, for tests, and for bolts. So you can imagine that you might have several projects that use the same volt, right? You can put that volt on the outside of those projects and you can just map it in this way. So it's highly configurable. You can also think of your projects as creating security barriers, right? So you could have your connections inside of each project, and maybe, certain departments have access to those connections. So definitely something that you can work with in your business structure. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is actually build a new flow. So I'm going to ask Otto, our AI assistant, if he can go ahead and do that for me. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and got Otto to create it. Paste this in, our nice little intern here. Our AI assistant, I'm going to ask him if he can go ahead and create a new flow and tell me about how I even get started there. So Otto's going to tell me all kinds of details about what I need to do, and then ask me if I want to go ahead and create that and what I'd like to name it. So let me tell Otto, I'm going to create one named Other Demo. Beautiful. So there's my configuration. Wonderful. Going to ask me if I want to go ahead and create that. It looks good. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, I control whether this is saved or not. I control whether Otto is going to generate anything for me or not. I control all of that here. So I am his supervisor. He is my intern. I'm going to have him do the work that I don't want to do. All right, so let's go ahead and refresh the screen. And that way we can look and see the new folder structure that was just created when we pull back from the repo. Perfect. Let's see if our new flow is in here. There we go. Okay. We have our new file structure, which is great. The next thing we need Otto to do is to create some reconnectors for us. So let me have Otto do that as well. I'm going to go back in here and then paste. I'm going to ask Otto to create 2 new files for reconnectors for me. And I'm specifying what I want them to be named and the connection type, as well as locations, any kind of detail that's going to be needed in general to create these. Okay. Yes, go ahead and create those for me, Otto. So Otto's going to go ahead and create those for me. I am going to save them. Great. I'm going to go ahead and do a refresh, and I just want to show you the new folder structure here, and then we'll talk a little bit about these reconnectors. Okay. So if you notice, I didn't have to identify the schema on either of them. So what Ascend is going to do is going to reach out, get the schema from the database. In this case, it's going to go ahead and parse out this CSV file, create the schema, create the tables, and load them with that data. Definitely something that I like about Ascend. I don't have to figure out what that schema is. I manually create that table and manage it. So Ascend can do that for me. So great, we have some data coming in. Now I think we're going to need some transformations here. So one way that you can create these transformations is you can use this little button here to create a new file. Name that file. For SQL, it's going to be .sql.jinja. For Python transforms, it'll be .py. But I think we're going to go ahead and keep Otto busy for the day. And let's have him create those files for us. All right, so if you notice here, I have a test. So this is a standard test, just looking for a column value to not be null. And then I also have what's called a mapping partition. So I have indicated that I want to map partitions one-to-one as true. What that means is that any partitioning in my read connector, where I'm ingesting my data, Ascend is going to identify those partitions and map them one-to-one to my downstream transformations, which allows for us to only process new or updated data for each of those partitions. Definitely more efficient. So there's my file. I'm going to go ahead and click Save. Perfect. Okay, next I'm going to go ahead and create another transform. Going to have Otto handle that for me too. And this transform is a Python transform. Otto's going to recognize that it's Python, take care of that file name for me. He handled it there. And if you notice here, partition by is weather date and a granularity of year. So I'm actually repartitioning the data here, which means that I'm creating partitions based on the year value from this column. And now what's going to happen is any downstream transforms that use that map partitioning are only going to process anything that has been updated, any partition that has been updated or created from this component. Let's go ahead and push save there. These are all being committed to my branch right now. All right, let's try one last final component. Perfect. Okay, so this one is just going to be a regular SQL transformation. We're not worried about the partitioning. We're just going to write this query here. Perfect. There we go. And then if you notice, I do want to mention one thing. If you notice, I have this static value of 0.05. Let's say that I had this value repeated over and over across multiple flows. I could actually create a parameter similar to how you saw the parameters passed from the vault into your connections. I could do the same thing. Maybe here I can write under these parameters and add some nice parameters that I can use in all of my flows. I do want to mention that because I want you to start thinking about the fact that you can even do Jinja macros. So thinking about how you can create some reusable code and make it a lot easier for you to manage your business logic with Ascend. And we're going to have a lot more documentation around that, as well as some more advanced webinar sessions that are going to cover some of these topics later on. Okay, perfect. So let's go ahead and refresh. All right, so now I'm going to actually ask Otto to create a write connector for me because I want this data to be written out to an S3 location. So let me go ahead and paste that in. Hey, Otto, build me this. Take care of it for me. Perfect. Otto took care of it for me. He asked me what I want to name this. I think I'm going to name it weather to S3. Going to go ahead and create that for me. Otto has been a great assistant today. Thank you, Otto. And if you notice, I was definitely supervising everything. Nothing was saved automatically. I had to make the decision to either write something out or to save it or / commit it to my branch. So that has been wonderful. Thank you, Otto. Okay, let's go ahead and now we have this all set up. I'm going to refresh it one more time. All right, so let's go ahead and build that project. So we have this new flow. We verified it's all there. It's in Get Now. It's in my branch. What we're going to do when we build a project is we're actually compiling the code. So we're going to complete that process, and we will have compiled component that we'll be able to look at here. So I can see my compiled code here. And then we'll also have DAGs, which is great, right? You can see, is this the structure that you wanted? So great, that looks perfect. The next thing I'm going to show you is I'm actually going to run this one. So I'm going to run the weather demo. It's submitted, looks good. Should show up here shortly. There it is, pending. You can look at it here. This is the same information, but there's also a nice little tab here with the run history that I like to use. And I can look at my DAG, and this is my actual running DAG. You can see that it has a specific value here that is for this one run. All right, so while that's running, I think I'm gonna have Otto do me one more favor. He's been great. I really enjoyed working with him. And I want him to do one more task, and I want him to do the task that I really don't want to do, which is to create some documentation. So I'm going to ask Otto if he can create a summary about my weather demo flow, tell me what it's doing, put it in a README file, and then I'm going to take all of the credit. So everybody's going to see this README file, and they're going to be like, wow, Tessa's on top of it, which is wonderful. You can see that Otto went through all of the files, created this nice little summary, talks about what each of these are doing, gives us some great detail, and pops out that file for me. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. Thank you again, Otto. You made my life easier. And I'm already back at my flow. It has completed. It looks great. Everything's green and successful. I did now run this flow manually. However, we do have orchestration and scheduling using automations. That allows for completely custom configuration, as well as a library of automations that you can use. So this is based on sensors and triggers. And next week, really exciting, Nanda's going to cover that in more depth. So we just built a data flow from start to finish. We used Otto. He's an amazing intern. He was able to handle all of the repetitive work and create my documentation. And yeah, that's pretty much my demo. I'm really excited to hear your questions.
All right. Thank you so much, Tessa, for that. If you want to come back on video, I know some folks had some questions for you, and so would love to invite you to join in for Q&A. I would love to hear, I know you've been migrating a bunch of our data flows, some of our biggest data flows from Gen 2 into Inception. So as you've been developing with Inception, what are some of the features that you've been most excited about?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the most exciting parts of Inception are the parameterization for me. I like the thought of being able to parameterize my data flows. So if I have things that are very similar, I don't have to repeat areas of the same code. I have used the Ginger macros. That's been amazing in some of my data flows. So you basically can set up your business logic and just use it across everywhere. So one place where I update it and it works with all of my transformations. So yeah, I think those are the items that I'm really excited working with. Made my life a lot easier. And in the UI, actually, Otto, as you saw, he handled a lot of work for me. that I didn't want to do, especially documentation. So yeah.
That's awesome. And if people were able to tune into that webinar we did about a month ago, the Unveiling Project Inception webinar, I think the UI has come pretty far in even the past couple weeks, but I'd love to hear, as you've seen the team working on new parts of the development, what excites you about what's coming up?
Yeah, major shout out to our UI team. They are amazing. What they put together is so intuitive to work in. And I think the thing that I'm really excited to see is where they're going to be working to expose all of that metadata that we talk about in the beginning of this webinar, expose that in the UI. So I'm excited to start seeing that happen.
That's awesome. And we do have a couple of questions. The first one in our Q&A tab is, can you talk about multi-schema ingestion from Postgres? Do you have any clarity on that? And again, just want to restate, we'll have documentation and we'll dive into some like deeper concepts as well as we continue to go. But Tessa, any light you can shed on multi-schema ingestion from Postgres?
Yeah, actually, as far as having different schemas or changing schemas, if that's what you're talking about, we do have some amazing capabilities around schema changes, meaning that typically whenever your schema changes on a source table, you have to re-ingest everything. We actually have configured our ingestion methods to be able to ingest only the new data and sort of back propagate the old data with maybe a null value that didn't exist before, and then not have to actually re-ingest everything. So those are some really cool things that I'm excited about as far as any kind of schema inference or changes. Does that answer the question?
I think so. And definitely feel free to ask clarifying questions. You can even reach out to data-eng@ascend.io or to anyone on the field team. If you have questions as well, they'd be happy to answer. One other question that we got in the chat is around data services and data flows. Is everything YAML now? Can you speak to that a little bit, Tessa?
Yeah, definitely the YAMLs are going to be the configuration for your flows, what we call flows, that be a data flow. But if you notice, there's a file folder system that's in place now. So when we talked about projects, you can somewhat equate that to maybe a data service. There's also a YAML there that identifies the configuration for that. But I think it's a lot more configurable, so you can kind of think outside of the box when we talk about the method that we had before with the data services and the flows. But project level, you can think of that if you want to have, your security boundaries there as far as connections, similar to our data services, that can happen as well. But yeah, it's a lot more of a folder system with those YAMLs defining them.
Great. Awesome. I don't see any more questions. So if you have questions, definitely feel free to throw those in the chat or in the Q&A tab. While you're still considering some questions, just a couple of notes. Feel free to join the Inception waitlist. If you've already joined it, we are so grateful. We are going to start giving access to users who are interested in building on Inception. So you can access the waitlist at this QR code. I'll send it in a follow-up email later as well. Be one of the first to get your hands on it and to see it evolve as our team continues to build it. It's been really exciting to watch that progression. So definitely recommend being one of the early adopters. With that, I don't see any further questions. So we will let you go a couple minutes early this week. Definitely join us next week. Nandan will be sharing about automation and we'll talk through how to build those and specifically demo that in the CLI as well. So thank you for being here. We'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.